It got to the point where, he even told me, he goes, hey, I know you know what you're doing. I trust you. You go out there, you make a call, and let's roll. And at that point, it really told me, it made me feel good that, dude has played as long as he has, trusts the dude that, has played center for 1 year.
Well, as the season is starting to come to an end for the Dallas Cowboys, so is First and 10 presented by JCPenney. And we got to go out with a bang, right? It's only right. Cooper Beebe, Cowboys starting center, here in the studio with me. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It was only right, I feel like, I was like I told you on the way here, it feels like you've been here for so much longer than you really have, but it is only year 2 for you.
Yep.
You came in 3rd round pick in 2024, had to battle for a starting position, but you landed the starting position at center. And obviously just thrown into the fire, but that's kind of translated to 2025 for you. What's the story that best illustrates how 2025, year 2, is going for you?
I would say, honestly, for me, I think the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2 was just my confidence and command of the offense. When I came in last year, never played center. I was, for people that really know me, I'm a really shy guy. So commanding an offense, wasn't really something I was accustomed to. And, I felt like at times year 1, I didn't necessarily know the offense as good as I do now. So, I was hesitant on things. But this year, I understand, based on, what personnel we're going to get, what looks we should expect. I have way more command, control of the offense, and I think that's the biggest thing that's given me confidence this year.
Most people forget the fact that you didn't play center at all at Kansas State. You started working on your shotgun snap with your moms.
That was pretty iconic. I still see people tag me in that, and, my mom's still famous for that. That'll, every Mother's Day, it always pops back up. And so it was really cool. She did a really good job. She didn't have to take, her lunch break, but, she wanted me to succeed. So, I'm forever grateful for that.
Hey man, what are moms for? Right?
Exactly.
But talk about the technique part of that, because it is kind of difficult, and correct me if I'm wrong, for you to obviously have to take the snap or make the snap and then get your first step up, also hand placement as well. Is that one of the hardest techniques that you had to learn with this offensive line position?
Yeah, 100%. Especially when you're just learning how to snap. It's you gotta make sure your snaps are good. So that's where the first part of it came in, where I'm struggling to make sure I hit Dak in the hands every time. So that can play with you mentally. But once I got that under the control, I was okay. Usually when you're at guard, you have your both hands, immediately. Where center, your hands between your legs. So just working, getting that hand back up was really, something I struggled with. But like anything, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So I just continued to, rep, and then obviously I still got ways to go. Obviously I still got things in my game I want to improve, but that just comes with time.
How does a trust with a center and a quarterback get built, and what did that look like for you and Dak in order to kind of get that chemistry going?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when it comes in trust, I think it really starts in the meeting rooms. And I had to show Dak that I understood what our offense is doing. I understood defenses, what we were trying to do on a particular play.
At what point did you see that trust take that next step?
I would say probably early OTAs this year, really, because it got to the point where, he even told me, he goes, hey, I know you know what you're doing. I trust you. You go out there, you make a call, and let's roll. And at that point, it really told me, it made me feel good that, dude has played as long as he has, trusts the dude that, has played center for 1 year. And that's where it really started, was in OTAs this year.
And you told me that, you had the help of Zack Martin.
Oh, yes.
Hall of Famer. How beneficial was that for you in your first year, but now that you kind of looking to take that next step?
He honestly was one of the dudes that really taught me, how to play center, and I was forever grateful for him. But just knowing the kind of player he is, first ballot Hall of Famer, it was just any little thing I could pick his brain about that will elevate my game. How he saw defenses, how he sees the game, like that kind of stuff. It's stuff, that I've really picked up on this year that I got from him, and that's what's helped me continue to grow.
If you could take one thing that you learned from Zack, just one, that's all you get, what would it be?
Really understanding, what you're trying to do as an offense. and each play has a specific, hey, we're trying to get the aiming point here. You block it a certain way, but understanding based on what we're trying to do, what's the best way they're going to try to defend it, and understanding that, you're going to understand, okay, look at, hey, look at those backers, they're on different levels. What is that telling me? Or just seeing the game on a bigger picture, I think is really what it boils down to, that he taught me.
When you talk about, you taking that next step, right? Not just the starting center for the Dallas Cowboys, but being one of the best centers in the NFL, what does that require from you?
I think the biggest thing is consistency. It's easy to have, a good play here or there, but to be consistent is where you really take that next step. And I think that's an area I'm still trying to, strive to be. I think at times, I have really good plays, and then it's like, okay, I have that one where it's like, okay, I wish I would have had that back. And, it's the NFL, so you're going to have it like that. But, just continue to work on that consistency, I think, is where you really jump up to that next level.
When you look at the whole picture, so to speak, of what this offensive line wants to be, I feel like it was pretty clear that you guys want to be physical, you guys want to be dominant at the line of scrimmage. How would you evaluate where this offensive line is right now?
I would say we're in a good spot. Obviously, we still have ways that we want to go to be an elite offensive line. I think it really goes back to what I talked about earlier, consistency. I think we go out there, have some really good games where we run the ball really well, and some where we don't. And really that's where the offense starts, is, when you're able to run the ball, it's able to set up those action passes, those deep balls, the GP, CD, and all those guys. And, when we can't run the ball, I think that's when, we kind of see that our offense struggle. And that's the area that, we're trying to strive to get better at, is just the consistency and, keeping forward clean, I think is a big thing here. Especially here recently, just, having, taking the hits off him, whether that's, with our technique, fundamentals, and that kind of thing, just continuing to build, so we can make that into an elite offensive line.
And you mentioned consistency. I think people also do forget that, this offensive line was decimated with injuries. The first, 6 weeks of the season, you guys are out 4 starting offensive linemen, very hard to do. But when you think about, obviously, it takes a long time for you guys to build that chemistry, get connected. How long did it take for you guys to finally get to this point, at least playing as one?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, especially when, you, like you said, you have dudes rotating in and out. I have a new guard, and then, I get hurt, and they have a new center, and it's just, it takes a while. And I think that's something you build, just through training camp, really. And I thought we did a good job of mixing dudes in at training camp, because, at the end of the day, you can't predict injuries. It's always going to happen. It's the NFL, and I thought we did a good job, but it definitely takes a while. When Book comes in, he's starting right guard. Okay, last year, I had Zach. Zach and Tyler are 2 different people. Different blocks, different way they go about stuff, and just you got to learn that, and he's got to learn you, and it takes a while. And I think, honestly, one of the biggest things that helps that is really not on the field. It's off the field. It's knowing that you can trust the guy next to you. And it goes back to, what I talked about with Dak is, I have to trust that Book knows what he's doing, so I don't have to, try to do 2 things at once. And when I know, he knows what he's doing, when I know what Tyler's doing, at the end of the day, we can just go to play football.
You guys have also faced some elite defensive fronts, Philly, Lions, Kansas City, Vikings, the list goes on. But what have you guys learned about yourselves that y'all didn't know before as a unit?
I would say probably, we can play with any defensive front out there. And I think it goes back to, having confidence in ourselves. I think that's probably the biggest jump, at the end of the day that we've got throughout the season, is just the confidence in our abilities. And, it's really that mindset. And I think, getting Clayton, getting Coach Riley, that's where it really started. Was the offseason, and just focusing on, hey, they told us, we're going to run the ball. That's what we're going to do. And, you got to get that mentality. And I think that's what's really propelled us to have that confidence. It's just a mentality, we're going to go out there, play physical. And, you got to understand that, at times, they're NFL players too. They're going to make plays, but you got to wash it away, just control what you control and just do the next right thing. And I think that's, what's really helped us strive this year.
You mentioned, the amount of hits that, Dak Prescott has taken. And obviously against Minnesota, faced the highest pressure rate, that he's faced since 2022. How have you guys kind of taken accountability of that, and what's kind of the emphasis of making sure you guys tighten that up in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, absolutely. They gave us some pretty tough looks. There's a lot of pressure. You don't usually see that in most teams, but we understand that. In order for us to have a successful offense, we need to run the ball and we got to keep Ford clean. And, when we look back and watch the film, really it comes down to technique and fundamentals. And that's really kind of been our, motto per se for this week is you got to get back. It gets later in the year and that's the fundamentals is what kind of slips on you. And that's something that we've been focusing on this week is we got to get back to that.
I know that this was a big question asked to Shotty, Dak Prescott, CD, is if, you guys don't make the playoffs, would it still be considered a successful season? But, considering everything that you guys have been through, would you consider it still a successful season?
I wouldn't necessarily say successful season. Obviously, we have some lofty goals and ambitions. I think at times we were dealt a bad hand, but at the end of the day, we're striving for the playoffs and the Super Bowl. And, when you don't meet that, obviously it's frustrating. We definitely had some games this year that, we were in the driver's seat to win and we struggled to close and that kind of thing. And, but, I think there's a lot to build on. And I think we're really establishing our identity of who this team wants to be and, really what this organization, wants to be. And I think that's the part where you really got to look at and be excited about is, especially, these last 3 weeks, we may not be, in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, we're going to go out there and compete. That's the motto of our program, compete every day. And, I don't care that, we're going to be done after 3 games. I'm going to go out there and give it my all. And so are the other guys. That's just how this program is built. That's how Shotty's built it. And that's what we're going to go do.
And it starts against the Chargers. Best of luck to you guys. And you never know what happens, obviously, hopefully for the downfall of Philly as well. But no, Cooper, I appreciate you. That's the way to go out with a bang. And, I know this is a wrap for JCPenney's 1st and 10 for this season, but we'll be back in 2026.